hear from Jordan Lindsey, Executive Director of the ARC and UCP California Collaboration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Jordan Lindsey, Executive Director of the ARC and UCP California Collaboration, speaking on behalf of our 22 ARC chapters across the state, 10 UCP affiliates, our 37 board members who are all parents and family members of individuals with IDD as well as individuals with IDD. I also speak today on behalf of the Lanterman Coalition. As I begin answering the question in the agenda, I want to give brief context for how we got here. I apologize if you can hear sirens in the back. 50 years ago, California passed the Lanterman Act, and the act was upheld and strengthened in the 1985 court case, the ARC versus DDS, when the court ruled that the act defines a basic right and a corresponding basic obligation. The right, which it grants to the developmentally disabled person, is to be provided with services that enable him to live a more independent and productive life in the community. The obligation, which it imposes on the state, is to provide such services. A person has the right to be provided with services, and the state has an obligation to provide those services. Fast forward to 2016, and for many years, those services weren't being adequately provided, and the legislature at that time required the rate study to be done. And as we know, in 2019, it identified that services were being underfunded by $1.8 billion. Last year, the legislature leaned into our community, and we're so grateful. And through heroic efforts, including, of course, the efforts of this committee and partnership with the administration and advocacy community, you were able to pass the full implementation of the rate study, starting with 25% this April. It really will create, as has been mentioned, a future of a person-centered and outcome-based system, and there's great hope and optimism in the community for the future. But I do want to take a moment to talk about the present. As has been mentioned, none of the funding has actually yet been allocated, and the community has undergone extreme stress during the pandemic. Also, most urgently, there is an acute staffing shortage, as has already been mentioned, across the state, which is causing the rationing of services and inadequate access. I've been asked to talk about the impact on providers. An informal survey of 90 community-based providers was just completed last week, and out of the 90 providers, there were 2,644 current job openings. And that means 19% fewer employees than pre-pandemic in March 2020. That means 1 out of every 5 staff is gone, and we can't get them back right now. If you extrapolate that to caseload, that's 73,522 people not being served on current caseloads, or more likely what is happening that we're hearing is people are being served, but in much diminished services because we just cannot find the bodies and the people to provide adequate staffing. It's the same thing impacting all sectors across the entire country, except that we can't compensate by raising wages, which is why we need increased rates now, because the money will go straight to wages, to the workforce. Most critically, I want to also highlight the impact and the burden that's being shouldered by individuals with IDD and their families. As a snapshot, both the ARC California's board president and past president have their adult children moving out of their independent living and back in with their parents, because there are no staff to support them, and tragically also losing Section 8 housing as a result. We cannot wait for the rate study implementation to trickle out the next 4 years. The need is urgent. We are hopeful that the legislature and governor will acknowledge this tremendous challenge at this tremendously challenging time, at the same time that we have a tremendous budget surplus. We believe that by accelerating the implementation of the rate study by 1 year as a one-time investment, and also accelerating the quality and outcomes-based requirements, that we can begin to aggressively compete once again for workers. And we have submitted this proposal to your committee. We also don't want to end up in the same situation in just a few years' time, which is why we also see the need for a regular updating of the rate models, which Ms. Pettick at the LAO already mentioned. We suggest every 3 years to update the rate models and subsequently the rates. Finally, we have changed as a community, as you have mentioned, Mr. Chair, since the pandemic began 2 years ago, and the rate study analyzed a pre-pandemic system of supports and services. We believe there is a need for the legislature to request an addendum to the rate study, and we thank you, Mr. Chair, for just doing so. And we hope that it will give us a chance to evaluate needed updates to models, eligible services, billing methods. And this, too, we have submitted to the committee for your consideration. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much.